Hello friends, good evening to all of you. At the outset, I will tell you that my voice condition is not that so good today. But anyway, I'll be able to express my views very clearly to all of you. Today's subject is monetary policy and fiscal policy. This is a very important area which is commonly referred by the various economists, professionals, media persons to explain the condition of the economy. This deliberation is dedicated for the students, for the professors, for the professionals, so that these two important things are known to most of the people. Friends, in a country, there are many policies like employment policy, industrial policy, HR policy, several other policies. But three policies are very, very important, which basically controls the invisible part of the economics. There is some amount of economics in everybody's life. And these three policies are very critical and very effective tool to all governments in the whole world. It is not for India. It is an effective tool to control the market economy. The government must have the weapons to control the economy. These three policies are basically controls the economy for the common good. Which are those three policies? One is monetary policy, second is fiscal policy, and third, normally people do not refer, but according to me, this is equally very important policy known as foreign trade policy, that is import and export policy. But in today's discussion, we'll basically deal with monetary policy and fiscal policy, how it helps the economy. Monetary policy is controlled by the Central Bank of India. That is, every country has a central bank. In our country, the central bank is Reserve Bank of India. In USA, it is known as Fed. This bank basically controls the monetary policy of the country. They are an independent organization. Although it is a part of the government, but they are an independent organization. They can take the decisions. The monetary policy, the main objective is to control the liquidity in the country. Why? To control the inflation. Now you can ask me, how liquidity is connected with the inflation. Yes, there is a direct connections. How? Why inflation is done? Why inflation is seen in a country? When you find that the demand is more than supply, then the cost increases. This is a normal economic theory. Now, how government can control that? Government can control that also. Now, there are two options. Either you increase the supply to the extent of demand, then there will not be any inflation. Supply is equal to demand. That means I have to increase the supply. I have to increase the production. Is it possible in the short run? No. Then supply stands as it is. If we can reduce the demand, how I will reduce the demand? Demand is created by the consumers, the people of the country. Can I go and say, no, don't purchase goods? But I can do it indirectly. How? If I take the additional liquidity from them, from the market, if money is not there in their hands, obviously your demand will come down. So government through monetary policy tries to reduce the money in the market. You can ask me how it is possible. They will snatch the money from the public? No, they will take some policies. And there are certain weapons. First and most effective weapon is increase the interest rate. If interest rate is increased, then borrowers, those who take money from the bank, they will be discouraged. They will not take the money. If you want to buy a motorcycle, if the interest rate increases, it will indirectly help you to say no, to buy. If the interest rate is reduced, you will go for buying more and more and more. So if government increases the rate, obviously borrowing will be very costly. As a result, the demand for building, housing, white goods, everything will come down. As a result, inflation will come down. Another example I can give you. If the bank increases the rate, they will increase the rate to fixed deposit holders also, wherein we put money like you and me. But if the interest rate is increased by the bank on FD, then you will think twice to buy anything. Rather, you will be interested to put your additional money to the bank. Through this process, through banks, they will suck the money from the whole system, slowly, slowly. You all know that our country's inflation had increased around 8%. But Reserve Bank of India has increased the rate on borrowing 3 times. And now the RBI rate is 6.25%. That means if bank has to take money from RBI as a loan, bank has to pay 6.25%. which was below 4%. As a result, banks are not interested to take money. Similarly, they are not also encouraged to give more money as borrowing or lending money to the public. All these affects the liquidity in the whole system. Through this system, they are basically taking the additional fund in the hands of the consumers. As a result, demand is coming down and equals to the supply. Inflation comes down. You see, India's inflation was around 8%. And what is the inflation today? After increasing the rate of interest, it is now 5.88%, approximately 6%. Again, RBI has increased the rate by 35 basis points in the last monetary policy meeting on 7th December 2022. And you will see the inflation will come down again when November or December inflation data comes to us in the month of January. This policy is framed by a very big, eminent economist known as Fisher policy, Fisher, Fisher. Mind that this tool is used not by India, it is used by 195 countries in the world. Because all the countries are fighting against inflation. Inflation is a sweet poison to the poor people. It is an additional tax. So, reduction of inflation is very, very important task for every government. Now, who handles this entire thing? Reserve Bank of India. Through various mechanisms. Interest increase is one, FD interest increase is another. Then banks have to take money from time to time from the Reserve Bank. It's called overnight money. Bank has always to clear the outstanding with all other banks. It cannot be delayed for even one day. And suppose if bank doesn't have money in a particular bank, they can take overnight money. Who is the lender? Reserve Bank of India. There also interest rate has been increased to 6.25%. And this is known as monetary policy. Because every government has one objective very clearly, that I will reduce the inflation. Because it affects more to the poor people. Because poor people spends 80 to 90% of their earning for food. If the price increases, what they will do? They have to reduce the consumption. As a result, they will slowly die. If you consume 300 kgs, 300 grams of rice, if you have to reduce to 200 grams, obviously it will impact your health. And that is why it is called a sweet poison. Sometimes there are economics with diverse thinking. They say that if interest rate is increased, my growth will impact. Yes, it is a fact. If bank interest increases, then borrowing cost will be high. Industries may not be able to take money from the bank. Production will suffer. These are so if production suffers, then it will impact the economy. GDP will come down. Economists say, yes, I understand, but still I cannot allow inflation to happen. People are first, growth is second. There are a lot of debates on this issue, but I have seen most of the banks consider kill inflation, whatever may be the result. Now, as you understand now that monetary policy is very, very important to maintain the smooth functioning of the economy. Then, fiscal policy. How it is important? Like every individual, every country has its own financial statement. Like an individual controls his expenditure in proportion to his income, control its borrowings in proportion to its future earning. A country has also to follow the same policy. We cannot go on printing notes and spend money. So there should be some policy which will control three aspects. Students, please note there are three aspects are controlled through fiscal policy. One, revenue. Every country needs revenue, that is tax. If your expenditure is more than revenue, then you have to borrow money, then borrowings. Every emerging countries, growing countries will have borrowings. Borrowings is not something wrong or bad. For growth of the country, you need money. And entire money cannot be funded by your revenue income, that is tax revenue. But there should be some balance. Like if an individual wants to do its dwelling house, he may go for borrowings from the banks. He will also use his savings. So it is nothing wrong. But there should be some policy. So fiscal policy deals with three items. Controls on your revenue. Revenue means tax revenue. In India, there are, all over the world, there are two types of taxes. Direct tax and indirect tax. Direct tax is income tax, and indirect tax in India is GST, excise, customs. These are the three taxes. Now, a country needs to have revenue commensurate with its expenditure. You cannot take the entire investments, entire infrastructural development only with the help of your own revenue. But at the same time, you cannot go on taking loan from the market because every loan has to be repaid and your interest liability will come in the next year. So there should be some parity in three areas: revenue, income, tax, for which there is every year there is a budget on 1st February. Second is the borrowing, how much amount you can borrow, and what should be the total borrowing in respect of your economy. Economy means GDP. And third most important thing, what should be your total expenditure? Expenditure, capital expenditure means development, infrastructure, and other part is the revenue, that means pension, interest, salary to the government people, that is fixed. We call planned expenditure, non-planned expenditure. That means in a budget, on 1st February, what it shows, what is the country's total expenditure budget, what is the country's expected revenue, and what is the country's borrowing. These three items. So if anybody asks you what are the items are dealt with in the fiscal policy, you will say country's total expenditure, direct and indirect, that means capital and revenue. In the income side, total borrowing and total revenue. It should tell you. You can ask me a question. Sir, what is the India's total expenditure in the last 22-23 budget declared on 1st February 2022? The India's total expenditure budget, Union government, is 39.40 lakh crores. Do not forget, 39.44 lakh crores total expenditure, both direct and indirect, that is capital and revenue. Now this 39.44 lakh crores you have to get, you have to earn. But our country's total tax revenue was 27.50 lakh crores. But Central cannot enjoy the entire tax. What is the tax amount? 27.50 lakh crores. What they have to do? They have to share around 41% of the revenue to the state governments, so that state governments can run. State governments cannot run without central subsidy, without central grant. This is called devolution. This is a very economic terms. So out of 27.50 lakh crores, Central estimated to distribute 8.16 lakh crores. That means Central is left with only 19.34 lakh crores. Mind that your expenditure is 39.42. So there is a 20 lakh crores deficit. In other words, out of 39.44 lakh expenditure, you have money only to the extent of 19.34 lakh crores after distributing to the states. So how a country will run? How our defense people will get salary? How retired people will get pension? Then government has non-revenue income also. Like they get dividend from the public sector banks, public sector enterprises. Reserve Bank of India gives dividend of around 65,000 crores. So with all these things, government gets around 2,70,000 crores. So you understand? So your tax income is 19.34 and non-tax revenue is around 2,70,000 crores. 2.70 lakh crores. So your income is 22.04. Expenditure 39.44. Gap 17 lakh crores. Out of which government planned to sell some of its units called disinvestment around 65,000 crores. So net deficit is 16,60,000 crores. I repeat, 16,60,000 crores. This is how government will maintain, how government will get this 16 lakh. They go for borrowing. Now borrowing is very high. It is around 6.40% of the country's total GDP. What should be the policy? Maximum deficit should be 2 to 2.5% or 3%. But 22-23, your fiscal deficit, it is called fiscal. This 16,60,000 crores is called fiscal. It is a plan. Why? Because of the COVID. During COVID, government continuously giving free rations. It spends around 3 lakh crores in a year. Now, last 2 or 2.5 years. Because of high price of crude, government was not able to increase the price at the petrol pump. We have been paying same rate, whereas the rate increased to $140, $135 per barrel. So, government had to borrow money. And this borrowing is known as fiscal deficit. So, 3 things we have learned. One is revenue, tax policy. Second is fiscal policy. What should be the ideal fiscal rate? Deficit 2.5 to 3%. What is today? Plan 6.40% of what? Of GDP. GDP is how much? About 270 lakh crores rupees. Or you can say $3.5 trillion. 6.4% of that comes to around 16.60 lakh crores. And this is called fiscal deficit. Every government has to control these 3 things. Under which policy it is done? Fiscal policy. So you have understood. If you go on taking huge loan, if this thing continues, 6.40 next year, country will collapse. Last 2-3 years, government has taken a decision that I have to give food to my people. I don't mind of taking loan from the market. This is a conscious decision. But if this COVID situation continues, or if this Russia-Ukraine war continues, it impacts every country. Because crude price increases, government cannot say, no, I will not buy crude. If they stop buying crude, then whole system will collapse. Because almost in every area we need petroleum products. If you do not pay the rate, they will not, the West Asian countries will not sell. India imports 85% of the petroleum requirement from outside the country. Government cannot do anything. Like today, the rate is around 80 to 83 USD per barrel. Extremely good. but it was 135, 140 barrel. So friends, these are the things, and sometimes government has to take the bullet. Why? They have to take a very hard decision. And these decisions are taken mostly by the Ministry of Finance. There are three important departments in the Ministry of Finance: Revenue Secretary, Finance Secretary, Expenditure Secretary. In one ministry, there are three major main secretaries who are deciding what should be our inflation. What is the inflation target? 4%. What is today? 5.8. So government is not ready to accept anything. They will only come quiet when it is below 4%. Although it says plus minus 2% is allowed, that means you can go up to 6, below minimum 2, maximum 2. But rate is 4%. So this comes under monetary policy. Who decides? Reserve Bank of India. But what will be the tax rate? What will be the tax revenue? Whether income tax? What will be your fiscal? This is taken by the Ministry of Finance. The Revenue Department takes care of the revenue part. Expenditure part is taken by the Expenditure Secretary, and Finance Secretary takes care of everything under the overall control of the Honorable Minister of Finance. So friends, if these control mechanisms are lost, the country will be Venezuela or even the country who got the World Cup final, Argentina. Do you know what is the inflation rate in Argentina? They are very happy with the Messi. But Messi sir cannot reduce the inflation. It is 82%. And our country has only 5.88%. Still we say prices are very high. But in Argentina, it is 82%. Pakistan, 28%. Bangladesh is about 10 or 15%. USA is 10%. UK is 10-12%. But all countries are facing this problem. What is the very basic reason? This was not the inflation scenario 1 year back or 2 years back, because of Russia and Ukraine war, because of which prices of all commodities, food grains, fertilizers, chemicals, everything have increased. And if petroleum prices are increased, almost it will impact on all materials. So friends, understand the job of finance, the job of finance minister is very difficult. So, to sum up, the country has two major policies, according to me, three: monetary policy, fiscal policy, and FDI policy, foreign trade policy, FTP. And these are the ways, these are the tools by which the government controls the invisible part of the economics. There is some element of economics with us, everybody. You do not understand or you do not know, but forces are either favoring you or going against you through various policies. If the interest rate is increased by the bank, obviously there will be forces with you. that let me put my money in the bank to get more interest. These are the forces. And who controls this? These two authorities, Reserve Bank and Government of India's Finance Department, in consultation with the Prime Minister's office. Thank you very much. I am sorry that my voice quality is not good, but I wish all of you a very, very productive year in 2023. This is the last lecture in 2022. My name is Timi Baran Chatterjee. I represent TCN Global and Economic Advisory Services LLP. This is an all India consultancy firm in the areas of taxation and finance, and we also do GST. Please join in our every Friday's deliberations on some important topics so that everybody, including students, UPSC students, staff selection students, candidates, aspirants, they can also take the advantage of these deliberations. Thank you and good evening.